Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us on My Conversation right on My Central Valley, KAIL. We have more right here. Please put your hands together. Still with us is Michael Bogart from Aspect Ministries. We mentioned Aspect Ministries, and that's what you do. Tell us a bit more about Aspect Ministries for the few people out there who may not know.
Well, Aspect Ministries, our byline is effective 21st century faith. And really, there's kind of two sides to that. We talked in the first segment about where Christianity is growing in parts of the world, and then why in North America and Western Europe Christianity is either stagnant or declining. And so what does it mean to be effective as a Christian, to have effective faith? Well, in North America, it means we've got to start getting in touch with where people are asking real questions.
Right.
And a lot of times I think the church is sort of out of touch with the millennial generation. Not that we have to buy into their value system, but we have to connect with them. We have to answer questions that they're asking, deal with issues that they're facing. And a lot of times churches are still connected with people with a mindset of the 1980s and 90s. And so we really haven't really thought much about how the gospel applies to people's questions, younger people's questions in North America. So that's one thing. And then, of course, the other thing that effective 21st century faith involves is trying to help the church succeed and be as effective as it can be where it's growing rapidly. I mean, there are some places in the world where churches are being established so quickly they don't have any leadership. There's nobody there to lead those people. An example of that is a friend of mine I interviewed for my dissertation who was called by a radio ministry that had established, I think, 200 new churches in the country of Mozambique, which is Southeast Africa. Right. And these 200 new churches, they had no pastors. And so quickly they had to sort of figure out some way to identify and train the leaders for those churches, because otherwise, they get sucked off into all sorts of crazy, things that people buy into without really knowing what the Bible teaches.
Now, with Aspect Ministries, I know you train the leaders to go into these places?
We consult with mission organizations and theological, Bible schools and things like that who are trying to train people. My dissertation was in cross-cultural theological e-learning, meaning, how you teach theological and ministry courses designed by a person in one culture but delivered to people in a very different culture. And that's not the same thing as teaching people in your own culture, because you can't use idiomatic language. You've got to understand that you can't use your cultural references to teach people in a different culture. So that's one side of it. And then the e-learning part is online courses, mobile learning on mobile devices, video that you bring in, all sorts of electronic enhancements to the learning process, because otherwise we can't send enough bodies over. We can't send enough physical, breathing people to these places. I mean, I've been on 30 mission trips to some very remote spots in the world, and it's expensive. I mean, it was very, very sick in the Congo once, wondered if I was coming home in a bag or, and some of that stuff. And not that I don't regret that at all. It's wonderful experiences, teaching Africans and Latin Americans and people in the Caribbean and so on. Loved all of that. But we can't send enough people to do the job, so we have to enhance it with e-learning, and that's what my dissertation was all about. And hopefully, we'll be able to help some groups, figure out ways to deliver training that otherwise they can't supply.
I know you just mentioned a few of the places. I don't think I've ever asked you. Tell us a little bit about some of the places that you've actually traveled to spread the gospel.
Well, I taught for 2 weeks in Kinshasa in the Congo. Wonderful people. The Christians there are beautiful people, as you find in many parts of the world. But it's a broken country, 90% unemployment. I've been to Haiti a number of times, once right after the recent earthquake back in 2010. Not so recent now. Mexico many, many times. I don't know how many dozens of times I've been in and out of Mexico teaching. I speak some Spanish, but not good enough to teach in. Let's see, I've been to Scotland teaching, been to South Africa. I've taught a number of times in South Africa. Loved every minute of those trips, except when I was sick. I wasn't too happy about that.
Now, when you're traveling to these places, you have to actually teach. Are you going with an interpreter, or is it just trying to figure out?
We asked the locals to supply a really excellent English interpreter, You got to do it that way. Like I say, my Spanish is good enough to talk to people, but not good enough to teach technically. And so we always have to have somebody who's really an expert interpreter
Right.
for that.
Now, I know when you mentioned going into different cultures, we're not just talking about the difference in black and white churches here in America. You're traveling abroad, country to country, and then trying to make a connection and educate people. That must be a difficult. How do you go about preparing for something like that?
Well, the best way to prepare is to go along with somebody who knows what they're doing and then just learn from them. But I think one of the blessings for me of doing that is to see that Christianity is a global thing. It's not a North American thing. I mean, it was given to us from the Middle East. And so, you know, when you sit down with, for example, a Congolese Christian and study the Bible, look at the Bible together, they'll come up with stuff an American would never think of. It just wouldn't occur to us because they get parts of the culture that the Bible's talking about that North Americans just miss. So it's a really enriching experience to do that. And of course, they gain things from us too.
Right. That's now with all your travels and your studies and teachings. I know locally here for people who are watching right now who would like to come out. Is there any engagements coming up that we can catch you at?
Well, actually, I haven't done much. I haven't got much planned between now and the first of the year, just with the holidays coming up. A lot of churches have special programs and so forth. But you can go to my website.
Got it.
That'd be a good thing.
Please give us that
yes,
information.
aspectministries.com, ASPECT ministries.com. And you can look at them. I've got many blogs there, some podcasts, and we also have some materials for sale. I've got my five books and DVDs, and especially the 45-minute Bible.
Definitely.
Is one that gets people started in the Bible, which really does give people good news, even in the 21st century.
I tell you what, it's always great having you on the show. Give another round of applause for Michael Bogart from Aspect Ministries. Always great having you on our show. You guys don't go anywhere. We got a little bit more for you right after this.